We'll get back to the pod in a moment, but first I have to tell you all about this game-changing product I use before a night out with drinks. It's called Z Biotics Pre-Alcohol. Pre-Alcohol is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. I won't lie, I was a bit on the fence about Z Biotics initially, but I gave it a shot and I was impressed with the results. Vacations, weddings, birthdays and reunions, there's so much going on. Get the most out of your summer plans by stocking up on pre-alcohol now. Go to zbiotics.com/race to get 15% off your first order when you use RACE at checkout. Pre-alcohol is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/race and use the code RACE at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, Z Biotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times.
As you've probably heard by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code The Athletic. Make your first deposit of at least $10, place your first bet on any game, and claim your voucher for a 1-year subscription to The Athletic. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., Mississippi, New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager.
This episode is brought to you by our good friends at NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. I'm sure by now you've all gotten back into your Sunday routines, but they could be even better. With NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get the most live NFL games all in one place, every game, every Sunday. And you can even watch up to 4 different games at once with multi-view, one of my favorite inventions of this decade. It's exactly what you need to catch all the action, make your Sundays more magical. And also, YouTube TV is great. I got it this year. It's awesome. Sign up now at youtube.com/BS. Device and content restrictions apply. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
The Athletic.
The race is on. And given we're still in the midst of F1's summer break, we've got something a little bit different for you. I'm Edd Straw, and earlier this year, to mark the 40th anniversary of Prodrive, I paid a visit to its Banbury headquarters to interview co-founder and chairman David Richards. Now, F1 fans will be familiar with him through his time with the Benetton and BAR Formula 1 teams, and perhaps even his role as chairman of Motorsport UK. But he also came very close to bringing Prodrive into F1 on 2 occasions. In fact, you could argue that Prodrive is the best team that never raced in F1. But regardless of that, it's an amazing company with a glorious history of success in rallying in particular, but also circuit racing, as well as working in other industries. So here's my chat with David Richards. Well, I'm delighted to be joined by David Richards, probably one of the most busy men in motorsport with many hats, obviously chairman of Motorsport UK, as well as the founder, the boss of Prodrive. We're in the wonderful Prodrive facility that anybody who drives along the M40 will see in all its glory. Thanks very much for joining me.
Yeah, welcome to Prodrive.
Does it feel like you're one of the busiest men in motorsport? You always seem to have been one of those people who's always got 2 workloads on simultaneously.
Yeah, I've always got something going on around me. It's I was intending to have a quiet morning today, back catching up on some work, and having had a week off last week. I was sort of. I was on a classic car rally, and but no, got dragged into a meeting down at Motorsport UK instead. So that's a fairly normal occurrence.
Yeah, I can imagine that happens plenty of times. That's the downside of if you have a sort of week off, I guess, isn't it?
I guess it is.
Catch up. But, well, obviously, one of the things about Prodrive is it's probably... We're thinking of it as the best F1 team that never was. So we wanted to talk to you about your experiences with Formula One, Prodrive's brushes with it. And obviously, it goes back a long way for you, because I think your first involvement was through Rothmans, wasn't it, with their March sponsorship?
Yeah, you've got a very good memory there. I'd won the World Rally Championship with Ari in 1981, had a young family, and decided that sort of travelling the world on the rally team was not really what I wanted to do for the rest of my years. And we've been sponsored by Rothmans for a number of years at that point. So I approached the managing director of Rothmans at the time and said, look, I'd like to stop on the co-driving side, but I just seen the amount of investment you're making across the board in motorsport, and tobacco companies were very much the main financiers of motorsport in those days. And I thought that maybe I could work with you as a consultant and assist you in some of this. He said, that's a very good idea. I think you should come on board straight away and help us with our new March Formula One team that they just decided to sponsor, 1982. And I remember it all very well. It was on the doorstep. It was Bista. Adrian Reynard had designed the car. He was a very young guy in those days. The rest of the team was a mixture of people from sort of old days of March to more modern people. And they had the drivers were Jochen Mass and Raul Boesel. And so I was thrown into the middle of this sort of two-thirds or a third of the way through the year, rather. And it wasn't going particularly well. And in those days, there were more cars on the grid than or qualifying than could go on the grid. So you had pre-qualifying. And the final nail in the coffin came when we'd invited guests from all over the world to come to Monaco Grand Prix to see the Rothmans team compete, only for neither car to qualify. And from then, that moment onwards, it was a case of winding down the team and reallocating the funds to something more sort of beneficial to Rothmans, and turned out to be the Rothmans Porsche Le Mans team.
And obviously, aside from your involvement with Rothmans, this was just before Prodrive was being set up. It's the 40th anniversary now, isn't it, of Prodrive? So this was the main focus, and obviously through the 80s and the 90s, huge success in rallying, in touring cars, obviously sports cars as well, particularly later on. So it's huge, almost it feels like a conglomerate almost of motorsports that you built up. And I guess Formula One was always one of those things that was being kept an eye on through that time, because it couldn't not be, really.
No, of course, for Formula One, anyone in motorsport feels that, you've got to one day aspire and get yourself into Formula One in some form or other. But that's not at all cost, in my view. We've been very careful and frugal in the way we've run the business here, and to make sure we've continued in business and continued to sort of very rarely have we ever had to sort of cut back and make redundancies. And so I've seen so many people come unstuck when they've just gone into headlong into Formula One. So I did have a few opportunities early on. Rothmans wanted to buy a Formula One team back in I suppose it would be about 97 or thereabouts. They decided Formula One was where they needed to be again, having had that foray earlier on, but this time they wanted to do it on their own. They wanted to own the team. And I went to speak to them, and they sort of said, well, how would you go about this? And I said, well, I'm pretty sure I know how to go about it. I'd go and acquire one of the leading teams now and build from that. I think starting afresh is going to be a very tricky thing to do, not to be recommended. Anyway, they didn't take my advice. They said, no, we're going to build from a greenfield site. We'll start afresh. And off they went. I'd already seen the Benetton family and got on quite well with them. And Bernie rang me up one day and said, do you remember the meetings you had with Benetton last year? They rather enjoyed the discussions with you and thought that they'd like to have a further talk to you about their their plans for this year. So I went down to Treviso, saw the family, met them to have a chat, and the basic premise was they wanted to develop Rocco as the new person to come into the team, or the youngest member of the family, and would I spend time mentoring him. And so I took on that challenge. And but to be honest with you, it was a difficult period for Benetton. They'd seen the heyday. They'd had Michael Schumacher winning the World Championship. They'd had a lot of great talent in the team had left, and we were limited on our budgets in those days compared with the other teams that were growing very quickly at the time. And it was very clear we needed a partner. And I was advocating Ford at the time, and they were sort of looking towards Renault. And so when we came to the end of the year, it was clear that we had a difference of opinions in the way the company should be run, and I left at that time. And of course, not long after, they sold to Renault anyway. So that was my first little experience in Formula One. It was quite an eye opener. It's it's a world that if you, whatever other form of motorsport you've come from, wherever else you've been, motorsport is quite a unique environment, and Formula One rather unique environment to walk into. It's I don't know what it would be compared with in any other form of sport. I suppose there's the top echelons of sport everywhere, and you go in there, and it's it really it's all involving, and it's all encompassing. So that was the end of that first era, and I'd gone in on my own. I went, just literally turned up at the Benetton factory on my own, and sort of to take charge. And when we had the opportunity to go back again, I said to myself, I'd already made this promise to myself, I would always take a small team of people with me, because I'm a great believer in being a team player and having people around me I trust and work closely with. And so when the opportunity came next time round in 2001, the Greenfield site startup BAR team had not lived up to expectations of BAT, and we were called in to see what we could do with it. And we ended up with a sort of 5-year program, or that was the contract, to number one, cut the costs, because the costs had gone sort of way over what was anticipated, to get some results, because they got no points in the first year, and they weren't looking good afterwards either. And finally, to sell the team, because cigarette advertising was coming under the cosh and was going to disappear, so they needed to come out of it. And it was a great fun period, actually, because it was we had great support from BAT right from the very top level. We had some good people around us, and the team itself were surprising, given what they've been through. We're highly motivated, a great group of people. Of course, subsequent to that, they've gone on, many of them, to do great things throughout Formula One. And it was a period of time that was really hard work. We talked earlier about me sort of doing different things now and chasing around. I don't think I've ever worked harder than those years when we were sort of in Formula One. And the end of the 2004 season with Jensen, Button, Takuma Sato as well, we were second to Ferrari in the championship. Never had that elusive win, but nonetheless on the podium many, many times during the season.
It's interesting you mentioned the contrast between the first time you did it with Benetton, where you basically went in on your own in difficult circumstances, because you say you went in with more people around you. It was basically a Prodrive management contract, wasn't it, with the team? So this I guess was Prodrive going in to effectively troubleshoot, wasn't it?
It was. We were just sort of parachuted in to try and sort the whole place out, and it's not easy starting something from new. So I do sympathise to a certain extent with the people who had that task, but something we didn't recommend, but. Now, when we got our hands around it and we got the sort of motivation of everybody there and got everyone focused, it was a very worthwhile experience.
But it seemed an interesting scenario that team faced, because often teams come in, they don't have the resources, they're struggling, whereas the resources were there, but it seemed to have been a little bit scattergun. And the right things were being done in areas, but it didn't seem very coherent and integrated.
But isn't that the case of so many startups in any sphere of life? It's very rare if you, especially in a circumstance where you throw lots of resource at something, that you get some coordinated approach. And there were disparate parties there. It was a team built around Jacques Villeneuve and his manager, who really, didn't understand the requirements of building a Formula One team. And so those were some of the fundamentals that went wrong.
And obviously, it's interesting how that came about, really, because that's down to your long connections with BAT in various forms of motorsport. I guess most notably the Subaru World Rally Program 555, obviously a BAT brand. So I guess those are the sorts of associations that you've been able to build, or Prodrive's been able to build the success on. Well,
I think that's if anyone asks me what's the sort of hallmark of my management and my style, it's about long-term relationships. It's about building those relationships right from the word go, and whether it's with Subaru in those days, whether it was with Rothmans, more recently Aston Martin, and I suppose in my own personal life, long-standing friends, and I think that gives stability and understand the relationship between parties, and it's a collaborative approach in so many things in motorsport. You can't it's not a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of even the term I'm looking for, but you must have partnerships to make it work properly. It's got to work for both sides, and if it does, why would you not continue it for many years to come?
We'll get back to the pod in a moment, but first of all, let me tell you about Grammarly. Email, Google Docs, Slack, you write across multiple platforms and places during your workday, so delivering consistent, high-quality communication everywhere is key. Grammarly is an AI writing partner that helps you get work done faster with high-quality writing for better projects, proposals, presentations, and more. Best of all, Grammarly works where you work, so you can get more done no matter what tools you use. As a journalist and podcast host, I'm constantly writing and rewriting copy and drawing up scripts. It's part of the job, and Grammarly helps make it faster. It's got some really cool features like tone suggestions to help you strike the right balance between direct and friendly in work emails. Plus, Grammarly has a ton of other great features like advanced spelling, grammar, punctuation, and conciseness suggestions to ensure your writing is professional, mistake-free, and clear. Get AI writing support that works where you work. Sign up and download for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's grammarly.com/podcast. Easier said, done.
We love talking stats here at The Athletic. Here's one that's super simple to remember. Discover automatically doubles the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cash Back Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back to $300. That's right, you could put it towards some memorabilia you've had your eye on, or treat yourself to a premium sports network. You earn, and Discover doubles. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
School is back, and Dick's Sporting Goods has what you need to win your year. We've got everything from cleats to Sambas, dunks, and more. Plus, the hottest looks from Nike, Jordan, and Adidas. Find your first day fits in-store or online at dicks.com.
Well, that point about building partnerships, I think going back to the Benetton days when you were trying to get the investments in, there was also that push with Ford and trying to potentially even sell the team to Ford. That's an interesting one because obviously they'd come back in. They were running with Jackie Stewart. So
I think that was just after that. I think we were the forerunners to that. I think I was having discussions with them at that time. I think they'd... no, you're quite right. They were with Jackie Stewart as an engine supplier, but then they came in with a Jaguar program afterwards. So I was trying to persuade them that was the right thing to do. It was with Benetton.
Well, it's an interesting example as well, isn't it? Because that was a startup team, and although it was done very, very well, it's still limited because it takes so long to do it, whereas a team like Benetton.
Yeah, no, you've got all the basic ingredients in place. And it's it is so difficult to have a startup in any form of motorsport, to get all the right ingredients around you. And maybe in the lower formulas, it's not so difficult. But as you grow and you get a larger organisation, new sort of things you have to design and manufacture and supply chain and the organisation of the teams, it's like running an army at times.
Mm. And it does sound like you got very close in terms of a potential deal with that. Obviously, the team didn't want to go with it, but it feels like there's a remarkable team that didn't happen there. Had Ford gone in there?
we got very close. We had a proposal on the table, and I'd been over to Dearborn a couple of times to see if we could broker it, and at the end of the day, the Benetton family just didn't like the idea, and it was to be a joint venture at the time. So. But there we go. So many things you look back on and think if only, and wonder what would have happened had we done that or done the other. But it's not worth dwelling on those things.
Yeah, exactly. And there's always unintended consequences and outcomes on that.
You never know. You never know.
One last thing on Benetton I did want to ask, because it sounds like the Benettons did rather throw you in at the deep end, in that you actually had to basically go and boot out Flavio Briatore personally.
Yeah, it was a strange scenario that when I asked, after the meetings in Treviso over a weekend, I asked the question, what about Flavio? And they said, well, when you get to the factory, you better tell him you're in charge. And so I got to the factory on a Monday morning and walked into Flavio's office, and it was no great surprise to him, I don't think, but had to walk him to the door. But the good thing about him, he's no side to him at all. He's always had a laugh with me ever since, and we've been sort of reasonably friendly ever since.
Well, another character who understands the importance of building up partnerships in motorsport.
Exactly.
That's why he's still going strong today. But coming back to BAR, you had your initial period of evaluation to work out what you needed to do. I think you said it was 90 days, you've said in the past, which is, for something of that size, that's pretty aggressive to go in and know exactly what you need to do, but that's what has to happen in Formula One. In terms of the kind of the key top line things that were changed, how big a change did you have to actually make there, or was it more one of those things where it was just a few small differences, a bit of optimization made a massive gain?
I wouldn't, I can't remember now. We're talking over 20 years ago, but it's but often the case is that it just requires a bit of leadership to sort of get everyone pointing in the right direction and getting the morale of the team right. Remember, this is a team that had gone, with great expectations and done the first year without scoring any points. So, you suddenly think, if you're in that team, it does create the wrong attitudes. But it didn't require wholesale change. It just required a proper plan, getting everyone to share in the plan, to understand, what we needed to do collectively to come out the other end. And then we had the Jensen Button ingredient as well. I've always had this theory that nationalities follow around their no nationality. So, and I've always thought with a British team, if you get a British driver in there who they really empathise with the team and the engineers and everybody throughout the organisation, it does build a following and helps with that culture that you're trying to create.
Well, that's an interesting point about culture, actually, because that's often talked about, particularly in Formula One teams now, and it can sound quite abstract, and it can be used by people who don't really understand it as a throwaway, but it's very difficult to kind of explain to fans on the outside what that really means. So obviously the BAR culture had to change somewhat. What does that mean in real terms? Is it one of those intangibles that's just shifts according to the environment?
I think you make I think that's a very valid comment. An intangible. It's something you innately understand, and you see when it's right and you see where it's wrong, and you can. I can walk into organisations and sort of I get a feeling for organisations quite quickly. If it's a company that's got a dynamism about it, that's got a clear ambition about it, or it's one that's on its back foot and is going backwards. And cultures are difficult to create. They take a long time to create. And people have to live it and breathe it as well. And and it's something you can't just sit back on your laurels and think it's just going to carry on forever. It needs nurturing all the time. It's a bit like that circus act where the chap spins the plates. You're sort of constantly spinning plates there and just making sure everyone's speaking the same language, everyone's got the same ambitions, and no great surprise that next Tuesday I'm taking all the senior management from here away for a day to have just a general chat about where we're going, what problems we face, and what everyone feels about the future.
And it's interesting, that point about the team being almost turned into the Prodrive culture, with the fact you went in with a number of key people, which is a slightly unusual kind of situation in that Prodrive was taking it over and wasn't, if you like.
Yeah.
So that's obviously quite a difficult thing to pull off, because you'll get pushback from the people already there, I imagine. Plus, you have to try and do it in a way that doesn't undermine the existing Prodrive organisation.
Yeah, well, we took quite a few people out of here. It wasn't many, it was half a dozen, that was all, but key people. But I never felt any pushback from the team there, and many of the team who are there now or in other teams in Formula One are still great friends to this day, because we had a shared ambition. And if you've been in an organisation that's just waiting for that clear direction and leadership to come along, we were welcomed with open arms in 99% of the people there.
And obviously there were clear gains in the 3 seasons you were there. 2004 was the kind of crowning glory, or the almost crowning glory. P2, great success from where the team was, but obviously one off where everyone really wants to be. But why do you think that progress was made?
Oh, you can't pin it down to one individual issue, one individual person, or it's a whole sequence of things that were. And any organisation, especially a Formula One team, it is a complex organisation. It takes a good few years to get your head round. The first year is really getting to know everybody, seeing where the talent lies, where the problems lie. The second year is sort of trying to put them all right, and then the third year you should be reaping the benefits from it. So it's the minimum of a three-year program, and that's no coincidence. We had a 5-year contract, so it's that's the sort of time frame you're looking at.
And certainly you pushed Honda quite hard in terms of getting that integration working. That seems to, if there was one thing that stood out, that seems to have been one of the crucial steps in terms of making the most, or do you not agree?
I don't think I succeeded at it, if I'm honest with you. I think that was the next stage where we would have gone next. I think there was still that feeling that the Honda engineers were there to build the most powerful engine, and it was our problem to integrate that engine into our car. It wasn't the collaborative approach it should have been to make sure that the engine worked with the aerodynamics and everything else around the car, and the compromises were required on both sides to achieve that. So that would be the next step.
And obviously the fact that Honda started to acquire the team, turn it into a full-blown Honda team, they decided they could do that better.
Do it themselves, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Well, as long as a 5-year contract and fully paid up, that's no bad thing. But it was interesting because that was a point where it showed that an organisation like Prodrive could excel in Formula One in terms of the leadership, management, the key decisions.
I think what it did for me, it proved that we could turn our hand to a wide variety of things, and we weren't just sort of a one-trick pony. People looked at us and said, well, you're a load of guys just come from rallying, and that was where our heritage and our background was. To this day, now we never fight shy of taking on any new challenge, and however obscure it might be and different from our roots or our experience.
And obviously you had to face some of the unusual challenges of Formula One. The button contract stuff obviously was quite time consuming and resolved pretty well, I think you'd probably have to say, for both sides. Maybe not for Williams, but for the team and for driver.
Well, I think the good thing is about it, and Jensen and I have become good friends in later life, and we sort of, you at the time it's fairly acrimonious and you feel it's all rather awkward and difficult, and how are you going to work with these people that they've decided they want to leave the team, but you've managed to persuade through legal means to retain them. That's always a concern, but normally works out okay.
I think Jensen Button would probably agree with that now. But obviously, once you'd left that, the Prodrive, the first full Prodrive possible F1 program started to arise. Obviously, that would have been a very big step, but a good time to do it. And obviously, it depended on being able to run customer cars, which became extremely complicated.
Contentious, I think is the word. Max Mosley had was rewriting the Concorde Agreement and was redefining what his views of Formula One should be. And the fundamental to the original Concorde Agreement was this idea that you manufactured the car, each team manufactured their own car, you owned the IP in the car, and you were sort of individuals, if you like. So, and 10 teams, 12 teams, in fact, then. And Max thought that was a bit ridiculous and that they should actually do away with that element of it, which would have meant, what we commonly known as customer cars. Now, the view then, of course, was that a customer car was last year's McLaren, last year's Ferrari, whatever it might be. I had a different view of that, and we had persuaded McLaren that with restrictive testing, with the lack of ability to bring on young drivers, having a second team with identical hardware to them would have ticked two very big boxes there. You could have got initial testing, could have developed young drivers, we could do a lot more. And so I remember going to tell Bernie that I'd come to an agreement with McLaren about their cars. He said, that's really good news, because I always thought it's a bit of a waste, these cars just getting scrapped after 1 year, and having the old car will be a big benefit to you. I said, no, that's not what we're going to do, Bernie. We're going to have the new car, and we're going to have the same engines as well from Mercedes-Benz, which was a little bit of a surprise. And because when Williams found this out, they decided this was bad news. And they'd actually signed a letter of intent to enter the new Concorde Agreement with Max at the time, and relied upon the fact that the basic letter, whilst they hadn't signed the contract to the Concorde Agreement, said it will very much be follow the lines of the previous Concorde Agreement. So despite Max's idea that we would scrap a lot of the individual manufactured parts and IP rules, it was not concluded in this agreement that Williams signed. So they managed to throw enough sort of enough concern around everything that by the time we got to October, it was too late to get it off the ground. McLaren were frightened off by it, we were frightened off by it, and we never went ahead.
I guess that's why it was doomed in that regard, because they didn't have to completely win the argument. They just needed to extend it long enough. Just
stall us, and then it was too late. And I look back, and that was the best opportunity for us, that one. Subsequent to that, we did put our name forward again 2 years later, but that first one was the best opportunity, and I think life would have been a bit different had we gone ahead with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, then also Formula One would have been completely different, because it's always interesting just to think, well, what might have happened? But obviously the whole path Formula One took would be changed by that happening, insofar as you could see other teams would want potentially team alliances like that. Yeah, so it would have been a very different environment.
But today you have the very same thing, don't you? You've got the Red Bulls, you've got the Ferrari Hasses, you've got other collaborations there as well. So it's happened by default.
At BlueNile.com, you can find endless ways to make your moments sparkle. From classic and timeless jewelry gifts to creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. And right now, you can save up to 40% on fine jewelry and 25% on engagement ring settings during the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale, going on now. Go to BlueNile.com to shop the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale and save up to 40%. That's BlueNile.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the Vehicle Owner's Manual for important feature limitations and information.
Was the idea there always on the horizon somewhere to use that as a foundation to build up a kind of complete team, if you want to think of it like that? It wasn't in perpetuity going to be a customer team, or was that not?
Well, that's natural. That's just a phase of developing up into your own organisation. So, but getting into Formula One, you have to take whatever steps are necessary to get yourself on the bottom rung of the ladder.
But I'm fascinated by you saying you managed to persuade Martin Whitmarsh and McLaren to do that. But that's no easy thing to do. You advanced some sensible arguments there, but that's not only you trying to make good sporting and business sense with it, but also it's a very strong thing in Formula One that you are teams are their own entity and they don't collaborate.
Yeah, but I think Martin was quite forward-thinking in his ways and a very collaborative individual as well. So I think from that point of view, he could see the advantages for McLaren, the testing advantages, the volume manufacturing advantages, the sponsorship advantages. They were at a time then when they had more sponsors than they could cope with on their own car. Developing young drivers, a whole range of ideas that would have been beneficial to McLaren, and at a time when they were very strong anyway.
And of course, the subsequent attempt, which was for the 2010 new teams, which was even more highly charged politically, I think it's probably safe to say.
We were right in the middle we were caught in the middle of the war between the FIA and Max Mosley and Bernie against the manufacturers. And the key to this for Max and Bernie was to have a strong independent engine supplier, which was Cosworth. And so for them, the only 2 new teams they wanted in would have to be powered by Cosworth engines to make it viable for Cosworth to supply. And whereas we already had a tentative agreement with Mercedes, and for me, it was only viable with that Mercedes arrangement. I could not imagine a Cosworth engined car being competitive. So I had a call from Bernie the night before the bids closed and basically said to me, change to Cosworth and you've got a deal, and stay where you are and you won't be in.
Which explains why a team that many expected would be let in was ultimately rejected.
Yeah, but I look back now and it's easy to look backwards at these things, and I wonder, would we be sitting here today? Would we be bankrupt by now, like both the new teams that came in at the time?
Well, that's the fascinating question, isn't it? It'd be very easy to imagine we sitting on a 1 billion plus team, but it could have gone very, very badly wrong. But I think that's one of the things that probably characterises Prodrive's outlook in terms of trying to do things properly. And for example, I think some, if they were told you have to go to Cosworth, might have just thought, oh, okay, if that's what it takes, we'll muddle through, try and make it work. But I think it takes quite good clarity of leadership to say, actually, no, this is not worth that. That will fail.
We documented it very well. We knew exactly what we wanted to do, how we go about it. And you're quite right. There are some things that are lines in the sand, and you think that one we just don't go over because it just won't work. And I watched from the sidelines with great interest as Manor became one of our tenants here and in our building, and the ultimate demise of that a couple of years later.
And of course, Haas just in the corner now as well. So another team that could do that on a similar basis. Do you have some sympathy looking today at a situation a team like Andretti's in? Because there's a lot of politics surrounding that. I know obviously you have FIA affiliations, so obviously the FIA, you've let them in. But
well, I think, I look at it with 2 hats, really. Firstly, firstly, I don't think. I think you have to know all the facts before jumping to a conclusion here, and I have little doubt that if Andretti came along with a full plan with a signed contract with Cadillac with engines and everything, and engines ready, then the matter would be very different altogether. But I don't think it's quite like that, and it's there's a very good balance between all the 10 teams that are there today at the moment, and the way that the whole program works. There are other knock-on impacts to having additional garages and circuits around the world that can't perhaps accommodate a larger grid than today. So I think for the sport, it'd be great to have another 2 teams in. So an FIA, in my mind, has the right idea that if the sport would benefit as a whole, but it will only benefit if the 2 teams coming in are going to be at the same level as everybody else. They're going to have the support of new engines from another manufacturer, and it actually undermined the sport. When you look back in the old days, and teams were going bankrupt overnight and disappearing off the face of the earth, and that's not what a sport needs. It needs stability at the top.
Well, that's something in motorsport that can be quite rare. Obviously, we think back over the 40 years of Prodrive, the shifting sands have been enormous, which is why it's quite impressive that this organisation has managed to thrive throughout that, because it's very, very easy.
Well, there have been difficult periods, don't get me wrong. It's not always been easy sailing. It's been there have been periods of time when it's not been easy, when we've had to cut back, and particularly I remember when Subaru decided after 18 years they were going to stop the World Rally Championship. Other periods of time when we built up touring car teams, and then teams decided to stop, with this Ford Motor Company at the time, I remember, albeit we'd won the championship that year as well. So it does have its ups and downs, and that's why we've diversified in so many other areas now to try and smooth that out.
Well, that's an interesting point actually about Prodrive, isn't it? There's so much that goes on here that isn't motorsport.
There's a lot of things going on all the time. It's we have our composites business over in Milton Keynes that does a lot of work, mostly automotive, but also outside automotive as well, and not very much motor racing, to be honest with you. And then we've got our brand and our merchandising company that supplies not just motor racing teams with their merchandise, and Toyota is one of their biggest customers, but actually football and the football teams, the Olympics, World Rugby last year. So a very diverse portfolio there. And then we've got the Advanced Technology Group, which they're doing an awful lot of work outside automotive, in aviation world, in America's Cup, and electrification, of course. There's a lot of work going on in electrical works, on whether it's last mile delivery programs or even trucks, which we're working on at the moment. So it's very, very diverse, as you say.
And also, when you start thinking about some of the what tend to be called alternative powers, but becoming mainstream really now, the electrification and hydrogen, all these things that are, there's a lot of movement on. That also seems to represent a certain level of foresight in terms of the way this company operates. That's essential.
I wouldn't call it foresight. I'd call it just normal business. We're there to sort of ensure the long-term stability of the company. And if you ignore the environment, and you ignore all the issues that we face in that respect, then you're sort of living in a different world to me. The roof of this building, which is sort of size of 2 football pitches, is full solar. The whole operation here is run on solar. We're doing an awful lot in sustainable fuels now. Our Dakar cars run on sustainable fuels for the last 3 years. And we're always looking at these new innovations now to see how we can make ourselves more relevant and more environmentally friendly.
And that sort of approach seems particularly critical in motorsport, which can be seen on the outside as a relatively regressive industry, whereas actually in many areas it's very progressive and can push that on.
I think we've got to do a lot more. There's a lot more we can do. Motorsport has a responsibility. We have the people, the technology, and the foresight to do a lot more in this respect. And I think it's always amazing to me that government and people don't realise and recognise the talent that there is within the motorsport industry that could solve so many of these issues today. You've got Paddy Lowe with his zero petroleum. You've got the technology incorporated in Formula One engines, which is ahead of any internal combustion engine in the world, and you've got lightweighting of all the carbon composite industry in this country. Lots of areas that could transfer into the technologies we require to have a long-term sustainable future.
And obviously there's a lot of contentiousness when it comes to, say, something like Formula One, which rightly or wrongly tends to get the most attention on the outside. Do you think the direction there is correct when it comes to that aspect? Is it doing enough?
I think the direction is good. We're never doing enough. None of us are doing enough. You've only got to look at what's happening around the world to see that we've got to accelerate all the work we're doing in this world. And I think it's beholden on all of us in motorsport to make sure that happens. And as a governing body, in my role with a sort of the Motorsport UK or FIA hat on, our duty is to make sure we have sustainable motorsport for the long term. Otherwise, kids, my grandchildren, won't enjoy the sort of the things that I enjoyed as a teenager, going off motor racing or participating in rallies and things like that. So we have to continue to push the boundaries in that respect and become relevant.
And obviously for a company like Prodrive, that does create the opportunities, doesn't it? Like you say, it's business decisions to push in these areas.
Yeah, it does open new doors and new opportunities. And we ran Lewis Hamilton's Extreme E vehicle for a couple of years. We won the championship in that with the electric off-road series. That's going to go hydrogen. It's an area we're looking at as well. So it's I think we've got to. There's so much more we can do in this respect. I think the truth is that if you go back 50 years ago, you'd see that sort of motorsport was pioneering technologies. It was, you can list all the technologies that came from motorsport. You list the car manufacturers that came into motorsport and benefited from those. I can remember sort of Audi with their four-wheel drive system came to rallying. Then the same company goes to Le Mans and take a diesel engine, which we all thought was sort of really basic engines, and they win Le Mans with a diesel engine and prove that it was a high-performance engine. And we've lost quite a lot of that in the last 30 years. I think we've become far too much focused on entertainment value and the TV product. And to do that, you need to equalize the performance of everybody. And in doing so, we've lost that innovation. And the great engineers that we have sort of focused on minutiae of minor performance improvements, not sort of creating great new sort of technologies. And I think motorsport has got to rethink itself and go back to that, and that will help us and become more relevant. It'll help us promote the new technologies and help us keep internal combustion engines for a few years to come, working on sustainable fuels and other ideas.
It's an interesting point, because certainly Formula One and a few other categories as well, whenever they do audience research, the technology and the innovation always scores very highly in terms of what draws people in. So there does seem to be a bit of a disconnect there in that
it's perceived technology. It's perceived technology because it's refinement of technology where we are now. It's not new innovations, and that's perfectly understandable, because if you allowed that freedom in Formula One, it would be just those with the deepest pockets would always win, and that's clearly not of interest to anyone to watch on television.
But of course, if you allow more opportunity for that, maybe you draw people in even more who are that's the opportunity that's there.
It
perhaps
could be, and maybe there is an opportunity for a new formula to come in which has far more open regulations.
That'd certainly be an interesting I can see Prodrive being keen on that if it could be made to add up. But just finally, obviously we've talked a lot about Formula One. Do you feel like you've missed out on anything from not being able to do that? Obviously Grand Prix racing kind of draws everyone in, but so much has been achieved, and
I think we did. We had our opportunities, and I never regret that. I think we took what opportunities were available to us. I'm not a great one for looking backwards and saying if only that had happened, and I'm more interested in what we're going to do next than what happened yesterday or last year or 20 years ago for that matter.
And I guess there's never certainty on what the future holds. Someone could approach you with some proposal to get Prodrive involved. I guess you would certainly be interested if it's if it was a good project.
Well, we're always interested in exciting new projects, but now I'm sort of more interested in the looking at seeing at what we can do with Motorsport UK to make it more embracing, to look at, I think historically administrators of the sport and Motorsport UK have been a wonderful administrator of the sport, in the regulatory control of the sport, but we haven't been good enough at promoting the sport and developing the grassroots where we should be doing. The top end of the motorsport will always look after itself. In Formula One, in the World Rally Championship, sports car racing, they've got great people in there who can develop the technical rules, can look at the commercial opportunities. Leave them alone. So they do an excellent job. We should be focusing our attention as a governing body on broadening the base of motorsport, making it far more accessible to people, democratizing it so that inner city kids can get an opportunity to go kart racing, which we've done now with our indoor karting championship, which is the biggest motor racing championship in the world now, with 5,500 entries in it. So that's where my focus is at the moment, and that's a lot of the focus of Motorsport UK.
And that's very positive to hear, as that's definitely where the barriers to entry need to be pushed down. It's great to hear the progress is being made.
It's it'll always be an expensive sport, motorsport. You can never get away from that fact. But if we can give people opportunities that I had when I was 17 years old, I could drive my standard car to whether it was a local club rally, it was a hill climb, or it was a car trial. I could do all sorts of things in it. Those opportunities have got to be still available to the kids of 17 years old today, and younger for that matter. And kart racing at sort of 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds in indoor karting circuits around the country that can then lead on to greater things. Who knows? We've probably got a dozen Lewis Hamiltons waiting in the wings there at the moment, if only we give them the opportunity to shine.
And that's certainly what will ensure motorsport is still thriving in the decades, centuries even, to come. Thank you very much, David Richards. We'll let you get on with your busy schedule, and thanks for your time.
Delighted.
The Athletic.